All right, hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. Currently, we are in Luke chapter 22. We are moving through the night that Jesus will be arrested, uh, tried, convicted, and then crucified, and then rise on the third day. But these are the events leading up to the arrest. Luke gives us a different perspective, as I often say when you're looking at the four Gospels. What is called the first three, which is called the Synoptic Gospels, that they are similar in their chronology, to the point that some people think that, and I've seen commentaries on this where somebody says that Mark wrote the Gospels and then Peter and Luke copied from them. Well, I mean, there may be things that they have copied, but when you read each um, gospel, you're going to see a different perspective. So I look at it more so that you imagine a four-way stop sign when four vehicles come to the intersection, right? And let's say in the middle of the intersection with an accident. So four get there and they see this accident. So you're going to see it from four different perspectives. And it's sort of like what's going on with the gospel. And Luke is giving us more details, giving us different details than the other gospels. So let's continue on with this. Jesus, I'm going to go back a tad because Jesus now he is going to the garden now. Now they're going to move to the garden. And we're going to pick it up at I'm going to go back to verse 39. Okay. So he said he went out and made his way as usual to the Mount of Olives. By the way, this is where Jesus will return. Okay. So fun fact, when Jesus returned, the Bible says his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives. Okay. His feet will stand on the Mount of Olives. So anyway, so he goes his way to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples followed him. When he had reached the place, he told them, "Pray that you may not enter into temptation." Now, here is an interesting thing here. Fun fact. Well, it's not a fun fact, but anyway, remember when Peter just right, we just a few moments ago, right? From this perspective, Jesus tells Peter he's going to deny him. I think in another gospel he said, "Are you going to deny me?" And then Peter argued with the Lord, which was amazing in itself, right? Like he actually argued with the Lord. The man who is the Messiah, the man who has been right about every single thing, the man who has demonstrated and proved he is God in the flesh. He's arguing with them. In other words, Jesus telling him, "You're going to deny me." Peter's like, "No, no, 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 no. They may, everybody else may, but I'm not." Okay. And so, but here is your chance, Peter. Chance number two, right? He says, "Pray that you may not enter into temptation." So he says, then he withdrew from them about a stone's throw, knelt down and began to pray, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done." And again, you see this human side, I think, of Jesus as well, the anguish. But you also see, again, if you go back to the beginning, remember how he was tested, how he was tempted. And we talked about that temptation in the wilderness, and the word tested is to prove. that he proves he is the Son of God. And then once again here he proves that he is the Son of God. Not my will, but your will be done. Then an angel from heaven appeared to him, strengthening him. But in anguish he prayed more fervently, and his sweat became like drops of blood falling to the ground. And I said, this is a very powerful image, right? How Jesus, the intensity of Jesus praying, the intensity of Jesus praying um, caused great drops of blood. Forgot to share my thing here. Okay. Now, in the last study, we kind of, if you notice, there's brackets around. There's brackets around this sentence here, indicating that um, there is questions about this passage here, whether or not it is in the whether or not it is in the other manuscripts. Now you have to get into understanding manuscripts, okay? How we get a translation. So just like, for example, uh, um, let me do it this way. Here's a good example here. Okay. All right. So if you all can notice on the side of the screen right here, these are different translations, English translations, and as you can see, there are just dozens of them. Okay, dozens of, this is Chinese, right? These are Chinese, and then there's even a Greek, but most of these are English translations. So what this means is that there, at some point, you go back to the original writings, the original letters, okay, the original books that were written by the both Old and New Testament writers, but especially the New Testament. Those writings were translated into, I think today, pretty much every language, but in our case, the English language. Now, what they are translated from is, we have copies upon copies upon copies, thousands of copies, okay? What we don't have are the original actual writings that this was written on. And one reason why is because they were written on dried out papyrus plants. So they're so flimsy. It's not like what we have, even the paper, right? So you could make a translation from the actual Bible itself. If you can read this is the Bible, right? You could make a translation from this using that English translation. Okay, so but this is of course an area for the scholars, that the scholars they do their due diligence and give us the best translations that we could have. Now, with that said, you have questionable things in there. For example, in Matthew's the death, the night that he is arrested, and when he is as Matthew recorded, when he is crucified, right? And it says that you had the great earthquake that happened, and then it says, and there were the graves of many of the saints open, and they appeared to people in the street. And that is a very questionable passage there. The tombs open in the bodies of those, okay, to the point where people don't believe that it's not an accurate, that thing is not accurate. And that's why they put the brackets around, because they do appear they found their way into manuscripts. And then so this, same thing here. You see a statement like this, and so the scholars would say, okay, as we are examining the copies and the copies that we have in which we make the translations, right? So the question, they say, okay, and there's sets of translations, the different copies of the manuscripts, as they call them. This is in some, and it's not in others. That's why they put the brackets there. All right. But so just another thing while I'm on this. So let's say if I was to just me being want to just take this and translate this into some kind of some kind of language. Okay, so I just use this is the New King James. Okay, I just use this, and just to kind of give you an idea, sometimes how things can happen like that. I could then translate that, but then maybe I won't put the brackets in, right? So then you won't know the difference. And I'm not gonna say I'm not a scholar, so I'm not going to go much further with this. I'm just kind of pointing out why the brackets are there. Now that said, it is a powerful, it is a powerful image where Jesus is praying with such intensity that his sweat becomes like drops of blood. And some people would even say that we see this statement here because Luke, as a physician, brings out this detail that a physician would would note. All right, and sometimes you may have that people with different expertise could sometimes point out things that we wouldn't. Like me, I'm by trade, I am what is called a stationary engineer. Most people don't know what that is, but simply, it's I work in boiler rooms. So when I see, okay, when I see in movies that have these boiler rooms, and you see the steam, pissing out, right? The steam. That's not a boiler room, people. I wouldn't work in a boiler room like that. But directors love to give that visual. But I'm going to tell you, no, that's dangerous, because what you would see there is intense heat. That if you were walking through that, oh, that's heat. Okay. But Luke gives us this detail, the blood, and so medical science come and we have seen different people have given medical reasons for this, how that the intensity of it would cause that bleeding, that sweat to be mixed with blood. Verse 45, when he got up from prayer and came to his disciples, he found them sleeping, exhausted from their grief. Why are you sleeping? He asked them. Get up and pray so that you won't enter into temptation. Now, this is the second time he's told him that. And if I may add, Peter, you bragged about not denying me. Well, you better get to praying so you can have some strength to be able to resist that. Okay? All right, verse 47 says, now while he was still speaking, suddenly a mob was there, and one of the 12 named Judas. Now remember, Judas had slipped out during the supper. He slipped out. And he also, remember, he had covenanted with the Pharisees to betray Jesus, and pretty much said, look, I got this. I'll be able to get him. We'll be able to catch him when he is away from the crowd, because the Pharisees had they didn't want to cause a riot. If they had arrested him, if they had arrested him in the uh, um, temple, then it could have caused a riot. And if you know anything about crowds, it doesn't take much for for a riot to ignite. Okay? Okay, anyway. So while he was still speaking, suddenly a mob was there, and one of the 12 named Judas was leading them. And he came near Jesus to kiss him. Now I have to kind of just ad lib here for a moment. I can picture Judas. This is his finest moment as he's leading them, proud. But Jesus said to him, Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? Now that's kind of all we have with that. We're going to see Judas later on in the night here. And what a sad thing this is. Verse 49 says, when those around him saw what was going to happen, they asked, Lord, should we strike with the sword? Then one of them struck the high priest's ear, the high priest's slave, and cut off his right ear. Now we know from the other disciples that this was Peter. Okay, this was Peter. Okay, so is he jump into action? I will die with you, Jesus, right? He's jumping to action. He's gonna, okay, Jesus, let's get this thing going. It's on, right? That little sword, remember they had? Boom. Slices off. He slices off the high priest's servant his ear. But Jesus responded, no more of this. And touching his ear, he healed him. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, temple police, and the elders who had come for him, have you come out with swords and clubs as if I were a criminal? Every day, while I was with you in the temple complex, you never laid a hand on me. But this is your hour and the dominion of darkness. This is your hour. And then he says, and the dominion of darkness. So he called them out. And what's interesting is he called them out. And then, but let's kind of go back to something here. One, notice Jesus heals him. Now just stop for a moment. So here's a crowd that comes out to arrest Jesus. What do they see? First of all, first and foremost, they see an innocent man. So all those who were arresting him, they see an innocent. Well, okay, let's say so even if they didn't know, they arm up, right, to arrest a violent man. This is what Jesus was pointing out. I was in the temple every day. Y'all saw me every day. Why didn't you arrest me then? Well, to be honest, Lord, they couldn't, right? Okay, but he's calling them out, right? And then he says, but so I was with you every day. And now you're going to arrest me as I'm a criminal. Now he tells them why. He says, this is your hour, the dominion of darkness. The Gospel of John will tell us and use that verbiage. They could not arrest him because his hour was not yet come. Now you see he's saying, this is your hour. The hour has come. And the only reason why you can do this is because God is allowing it. And again, for his purpose, that ultimately would what? Save the world. Okay. But I want you to see something here about the kind of hardness that can happen. And now one of the things I often pray for God's mercy, that my heart never gets this hard. You come to arrest a man. Peter tries to incite, right, violence. He slices off. Now get this. He slices off the servant's ear. Everybody's around. They see this. There's blood. Right? Jesus said he touches it, right? And heals the ear. He just done a miracle in front of them. Wouldn't you think, oh man, ooh, look at this guy here. This must be the Son of God. This must be the Son of God. No, they are even more hardened. Even more hardened. All right, guys, I'll stop right there. This is amazing, though, that you may wonder why. How could this happen? Well, Jesus tells us that their hearts are hardened. I pray that never happened, but it is also the hour of darkness. Okay, the hour of darkness. All right, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. I'll see you in the next study.